What's up, Fungal Associates?
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to the SEEDPOD, the video podcast about trees and other related topics. I am one of your hosts, and of course, right over there is KC Clapp.
It's me. I am actually on the other side of the planet right now. A lot of people don't know that. These guitars in the back, don't worry about those.
Yeah, those
They're
are
not all owned
That's
by
Casey's
one person.
guitar. Hey, Case, come on, give the people what they want. Take that down and play a song or two. Oh yeah, do you know any guitar, Case? You know a couple chords, right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's all I'm willing to do right now. I'm still workshopping quite a bit of other things. This is another one I've been working on. You hear how I slid it like that?
That's pretty good.
Yeah, hold on, I'll show you again.
I'll be honest, it sounds like shit.
Oh, well, thanks for your honesty.
Sorry, Case.
Your honesty's no longer appreciated, actually, anymore. In fact, from now on, I would like to only discuss who else is on this, no longer you.
Casey, I am right along with you. Today, we have a very esteemed guest. We've been wanting to get together for a while. It is finally happening. We have Justin Davies. Hello, Justin.
Hey, fellas. How you doing?
We're just
Wow,
so
what a
grand.
smoky voice. That was
I
great.
am so excited to be here. This is I've been on the edge of my seat waiting to talk to the two of you for a couple of years now. This is very exciting.
Wait, okay, so two questions. One, were you just expecting the call to come one day? Were you like, one day they'll
I
reach out?
definitely not expecting, but just hoping, just sitting and like looking at the beautiful Milky Way every time I got out into the desert and just like wishing upon star after
Just
star.
dreaming. Okay, well,
Somewhere
light years
out there.
later. Okay,
Exactly.
Follow-
Channeling Five-O Masquerade.
Yeah.
follow-up question. What is it that you wanted to talk about? What were you hoping to talk about with us in these dreams?
That's a great question. I wouldn't deign to think that I'm coming with a topic to tell you all what to talk about. I think I just wanted to come and jam and hang out and talk trees with the two biggest experts in the business.
Whoa!
Wow.
Jeez, my microphone. I just peaked.
Don't tell Tobin I said
Yeah,
that.
he'll
No, I
never
won't.
he'll never hear
He'll-
these. He'll never hear this.
He got so big. He doesn't listen to the podcast anymore. He's over it.
I believe that. Tobin doesn't consume content.
No, he's just a juggernaut of producing now.
Yeah.
Well, it is a delight. And before we go any further, we should say, who are you that we're talking to real fast? And why would you want to talk with us?
Yeah, I'm Justin Davies. I am a dude who just likes to talk about trees and make stuff out of trees on the internet. I think that's the shortest way I've been able to like pitch what it is that I do these days.
Nice.
Perfect.
I make a lot of short form videos on TikTok and Instagram, YouTube Shorts. I also make regular length YouTube stuff. And it's all kind of based around, and I'm sure we can get into this at some point, but my love for trees and expressing that through making things out of primarily woodworking, but also, I do foraging, baking, cooking, just all sorts of stuff. Trying to find ways to trick people into learning about my obsession about trees by kind of grabbing their attention with sneaky little ways like, hey, look at this cool piece of wood. Also, guess what? Do you know what pollarding is? So,
That's such a good way to describe what we, I think, collectively do. Trick people into learning about trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the pantheon of internet people who are like nature educators who also aren't boring, we're very happy to be around the likes of you, Justin.
Oh, I'm honored to be in that, grouped with some of those people, and there are a lot of great people doing that these days. By the way, it's just we are in the halcyon days of not boring nature creators.
Yeah,
God, you guys are using a lot of good terms. Pantheon and halcyon days. This is good. You made a reference earlier, Justin, to someone who I didn't know. I just let it gloss over because I'm like, I don't know.
Five-O
who he's talking
Masquerades?
about. Yeah, what is that? Who is that?
his Christian name.
Have you not seen not a Land Before Time? Sorry, wrong Don Bluth film. Have you not seen An American Tale?
Why
or
are we talking
An American
about-
Tale 2, Five-O Goes West?
Oh, okay. Yes, I have.
You've certainly
seen that.
heard of them. Yeah.
Now, see, we just need
one
to
second.
have you two talk about movies. Is all we need.
Casey, I'll make you remember. Somewhere out there. Those are the only lyrics I know. Sorry.
You made Justin cry.
I can't sing, or I could continue that song because I do know more of the
Let
lyrics.
me get my guitar real fast.
I'm not going to make anyone hear that.
I can expect to see you at like a slam poetry meeting doing the lyrics to somewhere out there. Justin, we're so happy to have you today. As is our wont with this new series, the SEEDPOD, there is a gimmick. Of course.
Always.
We can't just have a normal conversation and be pleasant. We have to add something to it.
Yeah.
So today we are doing a bit of a Justin, and we are making wood products.
We, Justin, are prepared. Yeah. So this is my maybe fourth attempt at making something from a wood block with a knife. And we are going to spend the next hour carving spoons from start to finish. And there's not, we're not going to stop until we all three have spoons.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, we know that your big thing is, of course, doing this while creating something. For those of you who have not listened to or seen any of Justin's work, you need to, first off. Second off, your kind of hallmark is that you would want to do something. And so you go out to your wood pile, you find a piece of wood, and you create something to help you make the thing that you initially wanted. So, for instance, you wanted to make cider donuts. So you said, cool, that means I need to make a cider donut dipping spoon tool. And then the whole video was you talking about how to make the cider donut, which you had never done before, allegedly, which you did spectacularly well.
Oh, thank
you. You went out and you picked a piece of wood and you said, well, this wood represents what I'm doing. And you got like an apple wood. And then you showed the entire process of you making this tool. And then talked about the tree, why, the apple and where it comes from, all the different history about it. And so we wanted to do that really quick a little bit, but it's going to be kind of different. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Wow.
Okay.
What is happening?
This is a black walnut.
That's right.
Ooh.
Go listen to our black walnut episode. Anyway.
Was that a plug for Completely Arbortrary?
Yeah, see what I did there?
In front of our guest?
Yeah, instead of talking about the wood, I just say, we already talked about this. Go listen.
Oh, I see.
Did that flow? Did that work? Are you guys compelled?
Great. Sorry, I fucked it up. Justin, here's the plan.
Yeah.
We're gonna make a spoon today.
Okay.
I'm sure you've done it before. This is my first time. I've never touched wood before. I don't know. This stuff is crazy.
It's gonna be good.
It's a lot heavier than I thought it would be. Casey's third or fourth attempt. So we're gonna see how that goes. I've been told black walnut is extremely hard, and then I tried to carve into it, and I was like, yeah, he's right. It's extremely hard.
Yeah.
So Justin, as a seasoned veteran, do you have any tips for very early on novice woodworkers like myself and Casey?
I do. I have a few. I think first and foremost, cut the wood and not your hand, if at all possible.
Okay.
That's rule number one. If you
do appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm not always the best at following that rule myself, but like by and large, you want to try to stick to that. Stick to wood and not your hand.
Interesting.
Two, it really helps if you can to, especially if you're doing something like a spoon, to carve a blank, cut out a blank. So if you have access to something like a bandsaw, for example, or a bandsaw is probably the quickest, easiest way to do it, is to cut instead of taking like a pure block like this and trying to cut that down, you're going to save yourself a lot of time if instead you can cut it into like a general blank spoon shape on a saw.
Wow.
And that takes a lot of the steps away. Like that saves you a lot of wrist pain. If you don't have access to a bandsaw, you can honestly do a lot of it with just a hatchet. And again, really be careful to get the wood and not your hand in that instance. But you make what are called hewing cuts. So you kind of cut into the grain at an angle or straight in, depending on how hard the wood is, and then kind of down at an angle. And you can quickly hew away a lot of the wood and leave yourself again with a rough shape. Because if you're starting from just kind of like, if this is all we have, you can definitely do that, especially with a softer wood. You can kind of cut in and eventually get there. But those are two shortcuts. The other the other tip is to really pay attention to which way the grain is going. This is why I love wood as a medium. Is it's not uniform. This is what got me into woodworking in the first place via my love of trees. Is how different one species operates from one to another. Like the grain is really loose, for lack of a better term, and will tear out as you cut into it. So you need to really have like a good sharp knife. Pay attention to which way you're cutting. Other ones are much tighter grain, and you can be a bit more aggressive with your cuts. And then I think last is just properly holding the tool. I kind of like to hold it with like my thumb on the back like this. Yep, exactly like that. And then kind of you can kind of use your chest as like a resting space, and that lets you kind of get some of these, especially at the beginning, some of these like big cuts like that.
Wow.
And you see this is a piece of quaking aspen, one that will kind of like tear out on you a bit more. So I'm kind of cutting into the grain there, and then I'll flip it around and like remove that excess grain. So anyway,
look at that.
Anyway, those are a handful of like basic wood carving tips. I will say I'm not an expert. I just play one on the internet. I like my most nerve-wracking thing always is when my videos like make it in front of real woodworkers. I'm always like, please don't please be kind, please be delicate, and for the most part they are.
Yeah.
But there you have it.
Well, honestly, I just took some of your tips just real fast, and I got pretty far. What does this look like?
Whoa!
Is that pretty
me
good?
too.
Yeah.
It is weird.
It's weird how it changed the color of that black walnut.
Well, we just
significantly.
All we did is just carved off all that dark colored wood, and we got this.
Yeah, this is what we call heartwood in the trade, and a lot of people don't know this. That black walnut heartwood is really soft and feels like balsa or something.
It does. Yeah.
What I was going to say was that black walnut famously actually does have very light sapwood. It's almost white sapwood.
That's true.
With very dark heartwood. So
really,
yes, I believe you've cut away all that heartwood and just left the sapwood behind.
That's right. Yes, that's what I meant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're pretty fast over here. Quick learners.
Incredibly fast.
Quick learners.
I'm so impressed.
This is actually. I think it was another species of tree growing inside of it. This is actually an American basswood that was growing inside of the wood of this black walnut that we had just cut. So,
see now basswood,
cool.
as I'm sure you know, this is one of the premier hand carving woods. This is it's the one that you always recommend, or if you're getting into hand carving, they always recommend start with basswood. It's light, but it's light. And thus very easy to carve, but not in a really obnoxious way. A lot of those really light woods you'll get like a ton of tear out. The grain can be kind of a pain, but basswood, not so much. It's really nice hand carving wood. Basswood,
wonderful.
Butternut is another really great hand carving wood.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
Justin,
You just recently did that, didn't you?
I did.
I don't want to embarrass you, but butternut is a squash.
That's true. What, Alex? You're so right.
I hate to call you out in front of all these people.
You're right to do so. You're right to call me out in front of all these people. As everyone knows, butternut squashes grow on trees.
It's true. I saw your video. I saw the image, and then I stopped there. It's like, look at that. It's like the penis tree from the world famous Treemies the other day.
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course, the Treemies.
Yes, which we should also note, if you didn't see the Treemies, go find a way to watch them. And if you did, you probably saw a bunch of the world famous butt plugs that you made, Justin.
Yeah.
Those were so good.
Oh my gosh. You guys, I'm gonna be dramatic and say, pause, hold on.
We're just gonna keep we gotta keep carving here. I got a spoon to make.
I'm also gonna say hold on, but I'm gonna wait for Alex's dramatic reveal here. Before
what is it?
I completely forgot. I have a Justin Davies original in my home. That's right. This is a Treemie.
Wow! Look at that, you guys.
I kept a spare one. In fact, I think Alex, we may have the same species.
It looks like it.
Does that smell like oak?
A touch.
I think that is a piece of Gamble oak.
Yeah.
Which is what this is as well. Which is which is an oak species near and dear to my heart, being located here in Utah. That is our dominant oak.
It's the one that grows up at the high elevations, isn't it?
It's basically like the only two oaks native to the state of Utah are the Gamble oak and then the shrub live oak, just down in the very southern corner of the state.
Interesting.
That's kind of it. That's all we really get out here.
I love that. A lot of people don't know this about the West Coast, or rather the Northwest. And a lot of people would think, like you go down to California, they're chock full of oaks. On the East, they're chock full of oaks. However, once you start going north in the Great Basin, you go north into the inner Mountain West and Northwest, we have one species that grows like a tree significantly up anywhere north of Portland, and that's the Oregon white oak. In the south, we have the California black oak, and then we can get the Canyon live oak, and then maybe a species or two of smaller shrub oaks that grow down the Siskiyous. But then if you go to Washington, one species of native oak. You go over to Utah, two species of native oak.
Interesting.
They really kind of disappear as you go up and it gets drier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and here in the Wasatch Front, where I am, basically the entire northern half of the state, it's really just that one species of native oak, that Gamble oak, which is
just incredible.
All over the foothills and any south-facing aspect up in the mountains is just going to be pretty much just straight Gamble oak and some curly-leaf mountain mahogany and maybe the occasional, and a bunch of big-tooth maples, but. Anyway.
Yeah. See, these big tooth maples. I'm writing a tree ID book, and that is actually something that is causing me a little bit of trouble because it's a tree that a lot of people actually would just say, "That's a sugar maple. That's just a variety of sugar maple."
Yeah, and very closely related, right?
Exactly. So closely, some people say it's the same species.
Is it a lumping, splitting thing happening?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
But so it could be Acer. Saccharum subspecies grandidentatum, or just Acer grandidentatum.
Yeah.
So everyone can make their choice. Now, real fast before we get going, so we have basswood via walnut. What are you working with, Justin, over there, and what are you going to create with it?
Well, I'm also working on a little spoon here. I had a few options actually. If I'm going to be just fully transparent, I had a desk full of species of wood. I thought about maybe being really adventurous. I've got a blank that I cut out here and a full block of wood of one of my favorite species of trees and the tree that got me into trees in the first place, Cercocarpus ledifolius, the curly mountain mahogany.
Okay.
But this is basically like stone.
I was going to say, they're called mahogany for a reason, right?
Yes, it is. This is like carving rock. To sort of hand carve this, I'd have to stop and sharpen this knife a bunch. Wow. So instead, I've got this really beautiful piece of curly quaking aspen. So it's got some nice figure in there. The quaking aspen, another tree that's near and dear to my heart, and so and a little bit easier for me to carve. So if I'm going to make some progress here while we talk, I think that was the better option. My third choice was I cut a little blank of an owl, and I thought maybe I'd try to carve an owl out of this willow wood.
Wow!
And so I might be kind of swapping. I might swap back and forth a little bit here to feel which of these feels like the most realistic to make some progress on.
Yeah.
I think that sounds fantastic.
Because willow, willow-like quaking aspen is a softer hardwood. Yeah. Which that's one of my favorite things to really bring the vibe down at a party is to tell people about what softwood and hardwood actually means. Did you know that hardwood and softwood is actually not in any way defining the physical hardness and softness of the wood itself?
Hey, great party, guys. I think we're going to head out. This is a lot of fun.
I was at a get together last weekend, and yes, it does happen. And
we've seen it.
I was talking about droops, as one does,
casually.
And I got to the end of this like kind of blackout rant. I was just sort of like drawing on all my innate knowledge about droops, and I finished and I looked up and it was dead silent. And my friend Alex just goes, "Okay, yeah, sorry, everyone."
I've done that so many times. You guys.
God.
We're all here.
Big same.
Well, Justin, let's talk about woodworking a little bit. I'm really into people's hobbies. I love learning about what everyone else finds really interesting enough to spend decades doing it and honing their craft. So how did you initially get into woodworking? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. It really genuinely was through this curiosity and love for trees. That started first. So I really need, when I talk about the journey to woodworking and ultimately to what I do for a job now, that's where it all starts. And that started with, I do a lot of trail running, or I used to do a lot of trail running, especially like 5 or 6 years or 8 or 9 years ago now. What is time? And I spent a lot of time out on the trails. I've always loved the outdoors, like hiking, exploring. Was doing a lot of trail running. And I was out on this training run one day, huffing up this steep switchback here in the Wasatch Mountains. And I came around this bend. And right when I come around this bend, I stopped to catch my breath. And I noticed this really beautiful tree sitting there that I'd probably seen this specific tree at least a dozen times. And then this species of trees my entire life, countless times. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, I was just in a headspace that day where it caught my attention more than it ever had before. So I stopped and walked up to it and really looked at it for the first time and was examining its leaves and noticing its leaves were just different and unusual. And its seeds were really interesting. And just the shape and size of it looked like this tree that belonged in the African savanna is how it felt to me. I remember being like, this does not look like any of the other trees around it. And I kind of had this realization and I realized I don't know what kind of tree this is. I feel like I've always loved nature and been a very curious kid and someone who very bookish and it bummed me out to understand that I didn't know what this tree was. And so I came back down from that run and I got home and just started looking it up, just researching, trying to do my best to Google, having no tree knowledge whatsoever, having no background to trees, just going to Google and typing in Utah Wasatch Mountain tree looks like African savanna. And wow. And eventually it took a while, but eventually I was able to confirm that it was the curly-leaf mountain mahogany was the tree.
Wow.
So I start reading everything about this tree and I'm just captivated. I'm captivated by the things that I'm learning, where it grows and why it grows there, how slow growing they are, how old they can be, how we don't know how old the oldest of them are because they're such an understudied tree and so many of them grow in these extremely remote places. It's not like the bristlecone pines where we kind of have these 5 or 6 spots where we know exactly where they are and they all tend to kind of grow together. And so we have a really good grapple on them. And then what really especially caught my attention was all the uses. I started reading about the ethnobotany of the tree and that its wood was really hard and so hard that it sank in water and is really beautiful. Wow. And I've always liked wood and things made out of wood. And then I had this realization of so I have this really lack of knowledge in things in the trees that are native to my backyard that I love. And then even those trees that I do know, like a quaking aspen, I knew what those were, a blue spruce or some of these native trees that I know what they are. I don't know, but I don't know what their wood looks like. I know maple and walnut and cherry and pine, and that's kind of it. Yeah. And so then I was just desperate to know, what does the wood for all these trees look like? So I climb back up on the mountain. I haul some of this wood down off the mountainside, find a dead limb, bring it home. Had no tools whatsoever. So I kind of figure out a way to bust it open. And then eventually I go to the hardware store and buy the cheapest bandsaw I can find and cut a little slab. And I'm yeah, this is gorgeous. Look at this wood. It's so cool. And so then I just started doing that. Literally, that's what I did. My first woodworking tasks were just gathering native species of Utah trees that I was curious about and cutting little slabs of them to see what the wood looked like.
No way.
Because I was just so fascinated by that. This is so cool. Not only did these, because it's this dual path of me, being so fascinated by what are all these native trees? Where do they grow? Why do they grow there? What are all their uses? And then how different the wood looks and feels and acts and smells. It's just, to me, such a gift of nature to be you know what? Trees are not all wood is such an interesting material. And not only that, but it could all look kind of the same and smell kind of the same and feel kind of the same, but instead it's this never-ending kaleidoscope of just beautiful variety. So
I love that.
So anyway, long story long, eventually I'm like, you know what? I should start making more than little planks. And so I watched a YouTube video on how to carve a spoon, and I bought a couple like basic hand carving tools and tried it out and carved like a pretty ugly spoon. But I was like, this is actually not as hard as I thought it was going to be. Like this felt really difficult and scary, but it was really fun and quite simple. And so I just decided to keep rolling with it, keep trying to make new things, I was always drawn to things that I could make where I could use random species of trees. So I've never really been one to, eventually I'd like to learn how to make big things like furniture or tables or whatever. But ultimately the thing that drives me the most is this. I want to see and feel and smell the wood from all of these trees I find interesting. So
Wow.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that you kind of came at it not from I want to build things route, but I want to see the wood, I want to smell the wood, I want to experience the tree itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Over just making stuff, which you also do fabulously.
Oh, well, thank you.
Hey, speaking of making stuff, let's get a spoon update.
Okay.
Casey, let's see your spoon.
Here's my spoon.
We'll save the obvious best for last and go with Justin.
Yeah. Don't worry about that
Now,
that portion right there.
Casey, I saw you sucking your thumb like this.
Well,
In a fashion that someone might do if they've cut themselves. Are you okay?
I don't know why you would think that.
Do you not remember Justin's first tip, Casey?
I did. I remember the
Casey,
first tip.
I was very explicit.
Yeah.
I'm using a new tool that I actually have not used before. It is called a scorp.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, scorp, they are either right-handed or left-handed tools that you use to like carve out circular kinds of
flesh.
spaces.
Oh, excuse me.
And well, you know what? Heck, I was carving out the middle of my spoon, the part that makes it into a spoon, and my thumb was just a little bit too high, and my follow-through, let's say my hands are a little bit strong.
Yeah.
These are brand new tools. I literally just bought them today, and it decided to test out how strong my skin was. It's not as strong as the wood. And so, I was just trying to add some color to it, but in an au-natural way, I don't have any okra on hand.
Yeah,
so,
properly blood-stained. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually, it is thank you, Alex. I have nothing else to add to that.
See, this is the beginnings of a nice ceremonial tool, Casey.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also, I'm drinking some coffee, and I realized that a 16-ounce coffee and carving tools, I'm a little shaky now. So, things we're just having a lot of fun over here is what I'm saying.
I could see things happening on your camera while Justin was
Casey has found a fair trade way to get bloodwood,
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
This is exactly it.
Literally, I am adding blood to the wood. Anyway.
So, okay, here's my spoon. As you can see, it looks like not much has been done, and it's true. But I'm going slow. I'm trying to do it kind of all at the same time instead of like focusing on one part. And here's an interesting thing that Justin, maybe you can tell me about. Yeah. I was holding the spoon from the handle and carving outward on the the scoop part of it, and I was like, I could not get it. And then I would like push a little hard, and it would like splinter off. I switched sides, so I'm carving away from the spoon part, and it comes off very easily. Is that a grain thing?
That is a grain thing, and this is something that Casey could probably speak to in a much more scientific way than me. But basically, the grain, the grain of a wood, as we all know, are just basically these little straws, essentially. And what you're doing is you're carving them, is you're cutting through those straws. So they're growing they're all growing in the same direction. So when you're cutting, it's much easier to cut with the grain because you're cutting across those straws at an angle in which, you're cutting with the direction in which they're growing, as opposed to when you cut against. Sometimes what will happen is you're getting underneath the fibers of those and they're wanting to tear all the way out instead of cleanly cutting. That's That's my basic understanding of it. Casey, I'm sure you could probably describe that in a much more scientifically accurate way.
All I could do is say that those are called vessels. In this case, they're actually pores. So it is just the wood property itself, but you're ultimately right, where everything is growing in a certain plane. It's growing upwards. So if you are cutting down, you're essentially cutting with that grain, and there's less resistance as opposed to cutting directly sideways or going against the grain in some other fashion. It makes it so that you're essentially going through something in a way that it is you're perpendicularly cutting into it, and that has a lot more strength rather than cutting down into it, where you're going with the cells. So the cells are putting up less resistance.
Interesting. I was trying to make an analogy to like cutting a steak against the grain, but I think it's the opposite. When you cut no.
You want to cut across it, right?
Right. Yeah. Which makes a more tender bite, but it doesn't really make sense to compare it to wood because it's
not quite
well, you can. Yeah, I mean, you can make that comparison to wood in certain ways because but that's more with the types of saws you're using. So if you're when you're cutting lumber, you want to use a crosscut saw because you're making an entirely different type of cutting motion when you're cutting those cells or those tubes. You're cutting straight across them. The knives of the blade need to cut a different way, as opposed to if you're making what's called a ripping cut, which is along the grains themselves.
Wow.
You're using an entirely different saw. So that's more with saws. With knives, obviously, we're just making one simple clean cut. So that's more about the direction and angle of the knife, because you can't always cut with the grain. Sometimes you just genuinely, especially when you're carving a spoon, you have to kind of orient the spoon around, change it, and make cuts against the grain. And so in that instance, you make it much easier on yourself to like make smaller, tinier cuts, which you're kind of mimicking what those blades of a saw are doing on a cross cut versus a rip cut blade.
Wow, Justin, you just kind of opened my eyes to something. So I've been doing like long strokes down the spoon.
Yeah.
And it's catching, but I just tried doing what you're doing. I noticed you're kind of like chipping away at it in a way.
Yes.
And that's become a lot easier for me.
Oh yeah, there it is. Give us that lowdown.
Wow.
Just beautiful. See, I would be worried though about breaking the spoon away from the spoon handle there.
Casey, look at his control.
Yeah, seriously. Like,
it's kind of fascinating.
Do you do hand workouts?
No, I mean, honestly, hand carving, I haven't done as much hand carving lately just because usually these days, if I am like, most days, if I am making something out of wood, it is specifically for a piece of content.
Yeah.
And so I often, like, if I'm hand carving something, it's like I hand carve one thing that week.
I see.
When I was doing more hand carving, especially when I first got started, before I was, I got into woodworking years before I started making content with it. I remember having like several long week stretches where I was working on a larger hand carving project, and your hands get very, very tired. I got swollen in areas. And if you look at those like full-time spoon carvers, they've got just big old mitts. They've got very strong hands.
The idea of being a full-time spoon carver.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that you do, sir? I'm a spoon carver. Yeah. Whenever I do the drop-down menu where it says occupation, I have a hard time.
Other. I would just love handing my business card out to people. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, right? Well, speaking of that, I'm actually going to a spoon carving workshop.
That's right.
This very weekend.
Really?
Yeah, Portland has a lovely group, and some of our listeners are actually part of it. It's called Rewild Portland.
Yeah.
And they have a spoon carving club. It's called the Portland Spoon Club.
Amazing. And
they invited me to do this a while back because funny enough, these people used to be my neighbors, and then they came to a book signing event that we did with Tobin here at Powell's Bookstore in Portland.
Oh, cool.
And they were like, "Yeah, we really love your podcast. We're part of this thing called Rewild Portland." And I was like, "You guys know that I used to be your neighbor, right?" And they actually had sent me a little note because they saw me carving a spoon, and they were like, "You should join our club. Like, it would be great." And I just had not the opportunity at the time. And so I told them about that, and they're like, "That was you?" And they didn't realize that we had lived next to each other, and they were a fan of the podcast this whole time.
That's incredible.
So finally got to get a spot in one of their workshops this very Sunday. So I'm going to go and say, "Hey, look at my bloodwood spoon I made the other day." Don't smell it. Also, don't touch it. I can't actually technically give it to you. It's a biohazard.
Well, Justin, speaking of the content you make, can you talk to us a little bit about what made you want to do that and get into that whole side of
absolutely.
your art?
Absolutely. So I, as I mentioned, I got kind of into the woodworking thing through a love for trees. And, that was probably when I started really like the time I carved that first spoon. That was probably like late 2016, early 2017.
Also, can I just break in and say, I love this. This is almost like it sounds like you could take it like down an addiction level where this is like spoon carving AA or something. Like, man, I remember that first spoon. Got me into this whole thing. God, I just, everyone's like, calm down, it's cool. You're going to be fine.
I saw my dad carving spoons when I was a boy.
Yeah. Sorry, continue.
I remember my first tree I saw.
Everyone else gets just like shivers down their back.
So that was like in late 2017, late 2016, early 2017, and then I got a lathe. Finally, that was one thing I really wanted to do because that was like a machine that really. The thing I love the most is getting random types of trees and being able to see what the wood looks like. And a lathe is a very fast way to do that.
Yeah.
Can you describe to us real fast what a lathe is, Justin?
Yes, it is a machine that you put a piece of wood in between two sharp centers.
Yes.
One has a drive spur and another one is just like holds it in place and it spins it around real fast. And then you basically carve it into that's what I made the tremies on, right? So this was a small branch of this was probably just like a straight trunk because the gamble oak is such a small tree.
Yeah, it does get very big.
That I put on my lathe, spun it around, and carved into this phallic tree shape.
Cool.
I make a lot of these vases are like one of my favorite things to make. Because again, this is a piece of antelope bitter brush.
Antelope bitter brush?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is.
That's another one of like, I try to remember what family it's in. I think it is closely related to the curly-leaf mountain mahogany.
Okay.
They have them up, I'm sure they have them up in Eastern Oregon. It feels like one of those ones that's a very great basin.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Shrub or tree.
Nice.
But I know it's a wonderful place. Anyway, yeah. So I got the lathe. I start getting into that, and then 2020, COVID hits. I go through a breakup. I find myself. I go through a good breakup. I find myself like with time on my hands again, and like rediscovering myself and coming into my own again, and was getting back out into trails and running some more. And during that process, I started. Just for fun, while I was getting back into trail running again, I started recording short, like Instagram stories. Basically, I'd be up on a trail and I'd come across some big tooth maples or gamble oak or just any native Utah tree, and I would record like a series of a dozen Instagram stories about like get to know this native Utah tree and kind of tell people about it, just for family and friends. And those family and friends who already followed me on Instagram were like really into it. People were constantly like, when are you going to do another one of those episodes? I love that so much. And so I was just doing that for fun. And then in early 2021, I experienced this just severe burnout with my job. So I worked in marketing for over a decade. That was
really?
I was kind of in content marketing / I kind of did a little bit of everything.
Hey, we have some producers. We'll give you a call. Yeah. See if you want to get back into it.
No, thanks.
We didn't even give you an offer yet.
So yeah, I worked for I was working at a tech company doing marketing and just got burnt out. a lot of stuff going on at that company. And I hit this point where I had been overworked and underpaid, and I was about to turn 40, and I was like, what am I doing all of this for? Like, like a lot of people were doing, I think, at that time. It was like the midst of the Great Resignation, and and I was one of them. I was one of the people who was just like, you know what, I'm there's no reason for me to be this miserable, so I'm just going to quit my job with no backup plan. I grew up wanting to do more like artistically aligned things. Anyway, my whole life I wanted to be an author. I wanted to write fiction. That's what I grew up dreaming of doing. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I always wanted to do. And I'd like written a novel before years earlier that I, was trying to get published. And I was like, maybe I'll just try to write again, or maybe I'll open up like a woodworking shop, or maybe I'll do something, but it just needs to be not this.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I quit my job and just picked up a couple freelance like marketing gigs. And a friend of mine who is in charge of all the content and social media for the Utah Jazz, she was like, hey, you need to be making TikToks. You're doing these like Instagram stories. You should be on TikTok making TikToks. And I was kind of like, really? Really? It was that was at that time when I was like, TikTok, the dance app, like really?
Right.
And
dance app.
Yeah. And she's like, no, I'm telling you, like, and so I download TikTok, I start watching them, and I kind of was like, you know what? There are like a lot of really great nature creators, and there are a lot of really cool like woodworking creators and, foraging creators, but no one that's really doing like all of this stuff. And so I thought, let's just try. So I just started making some videos for fun on TikTok, and they blew up pretty quickly. And within, I think, the first 4 or 5 months, I'd gotten up to a few 100,000 followers on TikTok. Blew up very quickly. And then I was still working those freelance marketing gigs. But then I started this map behind me, the map of official state trees made out of the wood from each official state tree. So I started that series on a whim, and that like skyrocketed the TikTok. That's when I went from a few 100,000 to over 1 million. And that kind of changed the game. And it was like, oh, okay, I think I might be able to I was able to quit my freelance marketing gigs, and I'm still very much in a place where like, this is a career, is like, maybe this will work, maybe it won't, we'll see. Like I'm still very much in a we'll see type thing, but that's how I found my way into this space, this content creation space.
Incredible.
That's amazing, Justin. I'm especially heartened to hear that you were in this place where you had to ask yourself like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
And that you like did something about it. That's always really inspiring, because I feel like I definitely have a tendency to do this, be like, wow, I'm miserable. Oh, well, I can't change anything. I'm just going to continue on. But I feel like recently I've just met so many people who are like, yeah, I was miserable, and I made this seismic change in my life and quit my job and left a bad relationship.
Yep.
And now I'm extremely happy and fulfilled. So it's great to hear that. And congratulations on everything.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, you're obviously crushing it by any means of the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's definitely not like it's not stressful still. That's one of the mental arithmetic things I did. It was like, you know what? Me personally, and everyone's wired differently, but I learned about myself was like, not knowing whether or not I'm going to make my mortgage payment this month is less stressful to me by a factor of 1 million than am I going to have to sit at this desk for another 12 hours today doing some project I think is dumb.
Totally.
It's like, how are you spending your life?
Yeah. And obviously everyone's different. For some people, that stress of can I make my mortgage payment would be debilitating. And they're like, I'm fine. Just, let me clock in for 8 hours or whatever and do this thing. And that's great. But yeah, I was kind of, I was raised in a culture where we were very much taught that that you do need to hook into that system. That's very paramount and important for you, you need to get a real steady job and get married and have kids and do that. And I found myself again, nearing 40 and being like, well, I didn't choose that path I was raised to believe I should choose. And I don't have a family I need to support. So I kind of looked at myself and realized I had no more excuses. So I may as well just try. I remember I was down in southern Utah, gone on a very quick weekend trip with my family, and had a bad work experience while I was on that quote unquote vacation time. And I was driving home, and that's when I decided, you know what? What if I quit my job tomorrow? Like, how does that make me feel? Like, let's play pretend. Like, tell yourself you're going to quit your job tomorrow. How do you feel? Snap judgment. And I felt like this massive sense of relief. Like, no stress, no anxiety, just like, that feels amazing.
I don't have to wake up tomorrow to sit at this desk.
Yep. So I called the one of the guys who reported to me, and on that drive, I was like, hey, just so you know, I think I'm gonna quit tomorrow. Just heads up to you, to force myself to do it.
Wow.
That's so crazy. I love that.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, just by the way,
incredible.
Tomorrow's going to be a big day for everybody.
Yeah, tomorrow I'm quitting, by the way. And he was like, oh man. It's like, I can't say I'm surprised, but that sucks.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. He's like, honestly, I wish you weren't for my sake, but for your sake, yeah, that's a good choice.
I felt something similar when I lost my job to COVID, basically.
Yeah.
I worked at a video production company that shot conferences, right?
Oh, okay.
These huge mass collections of people getting together in small rooms. And I was the last hire and the first fire. Yeah. And while I felt like, oh, fuck, like, I don't know what's happening now, I also had that huge weight off my shoulder. I was almost like, I hung up with my boss who had just let me go. And I was almost like a little excited. I was like, oh, wow, I don't have to do that right now. And I can figure out what I'm going to do later.
Yeah.
And now every time I'm stressing about bills or rent, I have to remind myself, like, this is kind of the trade-off for being like a professional creative person who doesn't have like a 9 to 5.
Exactly.
Alex actually has an email written up, saved in his draft, which is, Casey, I quit. I hate this. It's a way to make him feel better whenever anything goes wrong, because, I run a tight ship.
It's going to take a lot to get me to hop off this gravy train, Case.
This gravy train.
To finally let go of your coattails.
Yeah. Has anyone ever called this a gravy train, this podcast? That's amazing.
Well, let's get a spoon update, you guys. Casey, let's start with you. I see you jiggling your table.
Sorry.
And I know that you know I know.
Yes, I know. Well, I know that you know, but I didn't know that I was jiggling the table. But anyway, here's my spoon. Yeah,
hey, that's looking great.
Along.
That's looking great.
I'm working now on the circulifying the handle. Yeah, so we'll see, but it's still a little clunky. It's still a little bit club-like, I think, is the best way to put it.
You know what, Casey? I will say that would not look out of place in the hand of like a cartoon giant.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. So maybe I'll just leave it here and be like, done.
Yeah. It's a bit of a fantasy prop.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
As I drop mine, here's mine. I haven't got too much more work on it.
Hey, that looks really good though.
But I'm really enjoying like the pattern that it makes when you kind of chip away at stuff. It's just very pleasing, and I like running my finger over it. And it's like Braille or something.
There are a few really talented spoon carvers I follow who do just like a knife finish spoon. They don't sand it at the end. They've got kind of that like that a very expert version that I could not do, where it is just like very thoughtful knife cuts and kind of these angular patterns to it. It's really cool.
Yeah. All right. Where are you at, Justin?
Yeah, let's see it.
So I'm working on my bowl there. So I've got kind of that harsh light makes it kind of hard to tell, but I'm working on the bowl there. Some work to do on the back. So I've got a more like curly wood, so you can really tell right there the chunks that are taken out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you're saying curly wood, and I know I've heard this term before, but I want to get your opinion as to what exactly that is.
So curly, it has a lot of names. Curly wood, figured wood. Figured wood is a broad catch-all term for different types of wood that are figured, and curly falls underneath that. So
gotcha.
It's often called fiddleback wood, tiger stripe, flame wood.
Wow.
Excuse me. And this is a very specific type of figure where the grain looks almost as if you've just taken like, that straight up and down grain and you've smushed it, and it kind of has this like very rippled thing. And that's, from my understanding, effectively what has gone on is you've got like a heavy limb, or just the tree itself is over time kind of sagging under the weight of itself, and those wood fibers are compacting,
kind of buckling. Yeah.
There's a couple. Here we go. My home state of Utah has a really nice example from the state tree map to get this to focus.
Oh, there
that
it is.
Right there.
Yeah.
So that's a really great example of some curl in wood. This again being a piece of quaking aspen is one that you often will get this. Maples especially are very famous for this. Like
yes, box elder is what I'm very familiar with it as.
Yep. So curly maple, it's called fiddleback sometimes because that curly maple is such a common for the back of a fiddle. Like very high quality tone wood for the back of a fiddle.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I wonder if they use that on guitars in the same way.
I think they do. Yeah,
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
Well, Justin, you've worked with a lot of different tree woods.
Yes.
As opposed to plastic woods. Do you have a short list of greatest hits that you love working with, and then maybe a short list of woods that you will never work with again because they were such a pain in the ass?
Yeah, your blacklist.
Yeah.
Oh boy. This is a very difficult question for me because my approach is so based around like a fascination with my favorite type of tree to work with is always one that I've never worked with before because I'm just so curious. To me, it's like It's like Christmas morning, like it's like opening a present. Like that's the joy of this hobby for me, is taking, especially like on the lathe, making something like a vase where you've just got this like rough piece of bark covered wood and you throw it on there. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to find under here. And I cannot wait to see. That being said, so some of my favorites to work with, and it also fully depends on what I'm making, like hand carving. Some of my favorites to work with hand carving, definitely butternut. As Casey mentioned, I very recently did a video where I was hand carving some butternut wood. It lives up to its reputation of being like a really lovely wood to carve with. It's beautiful. It's very easy to carve. That's definitely really far up there. I actually have not really used basswood yet. That again just goes to show you the type of carving I'm typically doing and not doing.
Sure.
Let's see.
Straight
Applewood.
to expert level.
Yeah, applewood is really nice, especially like a green. Like most of the fruit woods when they're green are really, really lovely to carve with, like cherry and apple and plum. Are really nice to carve green, and then if it's dry, like something like a butternut or a basswood or a softer grained wood. On the lathe, I really love mountain mahogany. It's like hard to work with, but it's a little bit easier on a lathe. You just have to sharpen those tools constantly, but it's just, you're left with such a rewarding final piece. That dense, heavy wood, you're able to like sand it to a high polish, and you just like pick it up in your hand, and it just, every time I've ever handed someone like a finished piece of mountain mahogany wood, it just brings joy, like this heavy, hard thing that feels like polished stone almost, and being like, no, this is wood. You can see growth rings in it.
This is wood. God,
yeah,
that's amazing.
And then any wood that like just smells great, I'm always gonna love. So like a juniper wood or a pinyon. I love throwing those on the lathe. The blacklists on the lathe, relatedly, Russian olive is some of the worst smelling wood I've ever turned in my shop. It smells basically like dirty manure. It's really
dirty manure.
It's beautiful wood, and I do love to work with invasive trees just because it's like, I'm like, hey, let's take this thing that is like Russian olive out here that is such a pest and make something beautiful with it. Yeah. But it's not fun to smell. It left my garage smelling just like manure for a solid straight week.
That is incredible. Hilarious. I can't believe that.
Yeah. And then there was another one I was going to say is a blacklisted lathe wood. Yeah, just any of the ones that tear out really badly can be kind of a pain.
Yeah.
Just like those really soft grain woods that tear out a ton. But for the most part, I'm always just giddy to throw something new on there.
Sounds like very forgiving you are.
Really, I am. I think I definitely found, like, when you talk to like quote unquote real woodworkers who are doing, have a more utilitarian approach to what they're doing, they're going to be much more opinionated, where they're like, I will never work with pine because it like is such a pain. It tears out so badly. It's hard to get like a good clean joint cut into it. And I love black walnut because, I mean, who doesn't love black walnut? It's beautiful. It's easy to work with.
Look how good Alex and I are doing so far.
Yeah, you guys have really transformed that black walnut.
We did. Alex is honestly, he's a magician.
We're naturals.
He you put a knife in his hand and he's going to turn it into a sculpture. So, follow-up question.
Yes, please.
To you being a woodworker and other things, what's your mustache care routine?
Great question. It's not very involved, honestly.
I just wake up.
It just is kind of naturally like this. And you know what? The mustache was also came about around the same time as, like, it was also kind of a COVID thing.
Really?
I grew up wanting to grow a beard. All I wanted my entire life as like a young lad was like to grow up and just have like a nice full beard. And then especially like when I was a teenager and like I was a late bloomer and puberty felt like it took forever to end. And then being in my like mid 20s and looking like I was 12 years old, like I just desperately wanted that, a full beard.
Yeah.
So I kind of tried to do that longer than I should have. And then my ex really liked like a big beard. And so she constantly had me have this like beard that I didn't like, but she liked it. And then one time when we were out on a family vacation, my brother-in-law, we were at like kind of a spa area, and we'd all just been hanging out in the sauna, and we came out into kind of the locker room area, and he was shaving his meager beard into a mustache to be funny. And I was like, I'm going to do that to be funny too. That seems funny. I think I want to get a laugh out of my ex. And so I shaved my beard into a mustache, and the mustache had always been the strongest part of my facial hair. I kind of had like a strong mustache and like a weak beard around it that took forever to connect. And so I shaved the beard into a mustache, and we all were kind of like, ha ha. But immediately all of us were like, but you know what? It kind of actually works for you. And my ex was the only one that didn't like it. And so as soon as we broke up, that was another thing that like was the reclamation of the new version of myself, was to like shave the beard down into the mustache. And so now it's just this funny thing that it's become this iconic part of my online presence.
It really has. Yeah.
That's great. I feel like if you're if you're raised to be like, I'm putting this in air quotes, like a guy, that a mustache or like some sort of fun facial hair is one of the only like acceptable kind of accessories or something.
Yes.
Like jewelry was kind of frowned upon. I certainly couldn't have worn like a fun, like an exciting outfit, This nose ring for me was a huge deal because I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do this for me now that I'm in my mid-30s.
Now that I'm making choices for myself.
That's right.
15 years later.
But yeah, there's something kind of identifying about a facial hair that you look good in,
100%. I actually, there was an article in the New York Times just like earlier this year about the mustache renaissance that we're in right now.
Wow.
And
they
specifically cited like that being a big part of it, like that men, especially like cis straight men, feel like they have so few avenues with which to express themselves, and facial hair has become one of those things.
Yeah, interesting.
Curious. I had not heard about this.
Yeah.
I do know, though, I mean, generally speaking, I've always liked mustaches, and I've always been more of a general facial hair kind of guy, because I don't believe I have an extraordinary amount of facial hair in any regard. So sometimes you just you work with what you got.
Totally.
And Alex over here can work with a lot. Alex can grow a mustache or a beard on a whim.
Well, my mustache is always the best part too. So I've been going I've been going full mustache with like stubble. I really like that look.
There you go.
That's usually my go-to is to like I'll shave the face down to like a light stubble and then let it come into a heavy stubble, and I'm just like vacillating between that typically.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a very handsome look. I like it a lot.
The
Henry Cavill, I will say.
Henry
I got that from
Cavill?
him.
Who's Henry Cavill?
He's an actor, Casey, from Hollywood.
Okay. I
Yeah,
understand.
he is.
Hollywood.
He is Superman.
Yes.
Oh, Superman.
Henry Superman.
I love this. Now, just one follow-up question, just really quick. Have you used Hollywood to do something relating to Hollywood?
No, that's a great question. I haven't. The only thing I've made out of Hollywood thus far is Delaware on my map of official state trees. The American holly.
Yeah.
Yes, the American holly is the official state tree of Delaware. A tremendous state tree choice.
Very much so. I like the term tremendous there because it makes you think, is he being ironic? That is a wood that I have not seen for a long time. In fact, I heard I did an arborist report. I used to work for the city, and I would review arborist reports. And someone called out an American holly, and I was like, you know how I know you're an arborist who's out of touch with what trees are planted around here? Because you can't find it. Maybe in the Arboretum, but other than that, it's all English holly almost everywhere. And I was like, is this the only American holly I've seen like west of the Mississippi? Probably not. And it's another thing with this tree ID book. It's kind of what I'm hoping to do, because I think a lot of people don't know like what trees are planted where, and they would think, oh yeah, American holly. It must be the American holly that we have planted here in America. And I have to every now and then be like, ooh, not probably.
Yeah.
But the wood is very smooth. I actually was working with one. Not working with is way too much. I was splitting it for firewood, and it was not American. It was the English holly, and the wood was just like perfect butter. It was just like the creamiest looking wood I've ever seen. Like it was really nice. So, is that what the American one was like?
Yeah. Unfortunately, because it's Delaware.
Whatever you're going to say after that, we're very sorry to all of our listeners in Delaware.
It's no. Unfortunately, because it's Delaware, it's such a small piece of it.
I see.
Oh my God! Okay. It's like a little
That is
Lego.
adorable.
let me get out of the way.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
There
Wow.
Anyway, yeah,
What a
it
cute
is.
little thing.
It's a very featureless wood. It's very just white, like kind of a clean, featureless white wood. And that is what like holly is really famous for. Like if you want a wood that is just pure white, no grain, like very little to no visible grain in it, that's what holly is going to do for you.
Exactly.
Very
Fantastic.
cool. Well, you guys, let's get a final spoon check here.
All right.
Casey, as is tradition, we will start with you. Please share your spoon.
All right. Here is my spoon. It's still club-like.
It's pretty good, though.
Yeah, I tried to. There's some spots on it that are unscathed, and I actually don't like that. I don't think there should be any unscathed portion of my spoon.
Totally.
I think every single bit should be 100% touched.
Even if it's in line with what you were going to do anyway, scraping off a little bit or chipping it away looks better,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, I want it to look like that.
Get to scathing more of that spoon.
Exactly. Yeah, this needs to be a scathing spoon. And then I still need to do the bowl section of it just a little bit deeper, because I have made a spoon that was out of Western red cedar, and it was great, but I didn't go very deep, so it's kind of like a thick spoon, which is really good for like making pastas and things like that. But you can't like dip it in and like take a spoonful and like slurp a soup.
It's like a stirring spoon.
Exactly. But I want to make this one into a spoon worthy of slurping soup out of my spoon. Soup slurping spoon. I want this to
There
be
is
that.
a word for that. It's soup spoon.
Yes. I need to do a lot more research on spoons, you guys.
Man, you don't know spoons like shit. All right, here's my spoon. It is, I feel like I've made almost no progress. I'm just kind of chipping it away. I'm enjoying the conversation. What other excuses can I give? I'm new. My blade is dull. No, it's not. It's brand new.
Yeah. Alex, you're using the wrong side of it, actually.
No wonder I'm not getting anywhere.
Around.
All right, Justin, let's see your quaking aspen spoon.
All right, I am using a much larger gouge knife than I need to for this one. By the way,
Wow.
It's just
Oh,
like
God.
this is like I'm making it a little bit harder on me than I need to. But this is my spoon thus far. So we've
That's
got
incredible.
a pretty good little bowl to it. I've made very little progress here on the back side of the bowl. This to me is always like the most this is like where you need the most elbow grease is for this section here.
Yeah.
A lot of tear out. You got to make a lot of very careful cuts. So I very slow progress, but I'll tell you what, this was like when I started this with you all today, I was like, am I gonna finish this spoon, or is this gonna be something that I'll just like hang out with here on these guys, get started and never finish? But I'm gonna finish this thing at some point.
Nice.
This is gonna be a finished spoon, and I will send you guys a photo of the finished piece, because there is enough curl in here that I think we're gonna have a very beautiful spoon when this is all said and done.
I am
Wow.
also going to finish this, and I will send a picture to you. Alex, what do you think?
I think I would like to finish this. It will probably end up sitting on my desk for the next 7 months.
It's going to be one of those projects, though. That's a good project.
Yeah, can we really quickly just get a little shot with all three of us smiling with our spoons?
Yeah.
Yay! Thank you.
So perfect.
Justin Davies, thank you so dang much for joining us today and
guys,
carving.
This was a pleasure.
Oh, likewise. I could do this all day.
I agree.
Do you have anything that you want to plug? Any ats?
Oh yeah. Go check me out on YouTube. Justin the Trees. Justin the Trees.
Oh
Got it.
my God.
TikTok, same thing. Justin the Trees. And then on Instagram, it's just my full name, Justin Davies on Instagram. So
Wonderful.
your platform of choice, I am there making videos that are really silly and about trees. And if you like this podcast, you will like my content. That's a guarantee.
I can attest to that for sure.
I'm almost sure that 100% of our listeners know and love you already.
I have been getting I've been asked in my comments when I'm going to appear on your podcast since my first viral video.
Wow.
That is hilarious.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
The crew has been they've been invested from the jump.
Amazing.
Makes
and
me
here
feel
we
so
are.
good. Last question, just as we go. You have completed your first United States wood, correct?
Yes.
And I assume that you did Douglas fir for Oregon.
Yes, indeed.
But your second one, you're doing not the state trees specifically, right? Or
That's right.
necessarily, perhaps.
That's right.
Have you done it? Did I miss this video? For
You have not missed it, but I will tell you, Casey.
Oh, I was hoping you were going to share
A
it with
sneak
us.
peek?
Well,
I know.
I have this. This is like ready here. I had a really interesting and cool guy who I actually want to like interview for a video of mine in the future. Reach out to me from Oregon, with asking if I wanted a piece of wood from the tree I've always been eyeing to make Oregon out of for this video.
I think I know which tree it is.
And he sent me a piece of it, and he just had like some really cool stuff he shared. But anyway, what tree are you thinking, Casey? What do you think it's going to be?
Does it? Can I just ask? Is this the piece of wood that you got? Does it have a scent to it?
I have not worked with it, and so I actually don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
You would know if you had it because it's a hallmark of it, which is the Bay Laurel or Oregon Myrtle.
Wow.
That's correct. That is what we will be featuring in that episode. Yes, indeed.
I'm so
Amazing.
excited about
Yeah,
this.
I'm really excited to the point where I am this close to deciding to really expand that episode on the YouTube channel. I really want to drive up to I now forget the name of the town, but there is a town, you've probably heard this story. There's a town in Oregon where coins made out of a bay
Yes.
laurel wood are still legal tender.
South Bend. It's
South Bend,
just-
that's it,
Just
yes.
north of Coos Bay.
Wow.
And so there are still some people there that have like full sets of these from the Great Depression. And like I need to do some like work on my end to try to figure out if I can make this happen. But I might be taking a trek across the basin, if you will. To,
Wow.
I really want to make the Oregon one a special episode. So.
Well, give us a call if you need any help.
Justin, thank you again for joining us. Casey, thank you for being here. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to this and watching this episode of the Completely Arbitrary Seed Pod. We will see you later. Completely Arbitrary is produced by Alex Crowson and Casey Clapp. Our artwork is by Jillian Barthold, and our music is by Aves and the Mini Vandals. If you want to support this podcast and become a Treemium member, head over to arbitrarypod.supercast.com. Thanks for listening.